Hello everybody, welcome back to another video with Lim Reviews. Now in today's video, as you can see from the topic title above, we will be talking a little bit more about OnePlus 10 Pro running on OxygenOS. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, me personally, I used to be a OnePlus user. I use it all the way up to the OnePlus 9, and then I actually switched on to a different brand. But I always kept my OnePlus Nord 2 as my second phone, and when I heard that OxygenOS was going to be cancelled, honestly speaking, I was a little bit disappointed with the brand. But here at MWC 2022, it seems that things are picking up again and OxygenOS is going to be resurrected. So let's talk a little bit about the OnePlus 10 Pro that I experienced here at MWC Barcelona that is actually running on OxygenOS. But before we do that, of course, if you just want to support the channel, don't forget to drop a like down below or sub to the channel. Any kind of support is very much appreciated. Let's begin. Alright, so before I talk about the device, the software and all that, let us just quickly recap on the kind of specifications that we have here. First up, in terms of pricing, obviously I don't have the official pricing yet, but based on China pricing and all that, I'm expecting the base variant, the one with 8GB of RAM and the 256GB of internal memory, to come into Malaysia hopefully at 3,000 ringgit or so. That puts it way below the Samsung S22 series, and again, this is actually a flagship device, so I would say pricing wise is somewhat reasonable, but we'll have to wait and see. Now moving on, let's talk a little bit about the design. I did have the opportunity to finally hold the phone in person, and yes, on pictures alone, when I see it on a website, I wasn't too pleased with the design, and honestly speaking, when I held it in person again, it didn't really blow me away. The design looked a little bit weird for a OnePlus device, but I must say that it wasn't too hideous, it wasn't ugly or anything like that. It's just that the camera module on the back panel looks a little bit too huge for the device itself. So that's just my personal opinion. Overall, I think just holding the device, it was very bearable with just one hand. It didn't feel too large or anything like that. The build quality is amazing, just like on all previous OnePlus devices, so I'm happy to forgive that. If you look on the sides, there's something that I want to point out. We still have the slider that switches the phone from silent to vibrate and all that, so I'm happy that the slider is still here on the OnePlus 10 Pro, which we've actually seen it missing on certain devices because, you know, OnePlus likes to rebrand Oppo devices. So in terms of the design, I think it is quite alright. Definitely not the best looking device out there, but I noticed that in China, there's actually the white version of the OnePlus 10 Pro, and that really looks amazing. It looks so much better than the green and the black that we saw at the show. So hopefully the white version actually comes into global market someday. Now let's talk a little bit about the display, because that's actually a very, very interesting display. Now we do have a 6.7-inch QHD Plus AMOLED display that is actually running on Samsung's LTPO2 technology, and what this means is basically the device itself, the display itself, is able to, you know, have variable refresh rates to help you save on battery. Now LTPO2 means that the device itself can go down all the way to 1 Hz or all the way up to 120 Hz, and basically it just works great for saving more battery, you know, on that variable refresh rate. Now apart from that, it also has a maximum brightness of 1002 or 300 nits. Now at the show, I was definitely very happy to see it in person. The display looked great. I was moving around trying to change a little bit of wallpapers just to see the colors, you know, the saturation, the contrast levels and all that. And the good news here is that the display was again one of the best parts of the device itself. I have always loved OnePlus, you know, their displays, and this one was also another good one. It felt very smooth, obviously with the 120 Hz refresh rate. I'm not sure what the touch sampling rate is, but again, it is a very fluid and nice display. It has slight curves on the sides there, which didn't really affect my overall usage, but again, this is just a quick hands-on, and my experience so far based on my first impressions is great. Now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the processing power, because that's also pretty interesting. Obviously, being a flagship device in 2022, we do have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. We have RAM options of all the way up to 12GB of LPDDR5. And in terms of the storage, you have storage options all the way up to 512GB of UFS 3.1 storage. Now, I did notice that although it is UFS 3.1 storage, when I tried to load up the photo gallery, the pictures took quite a little bit of time to actually load up, so I'm a bit confused there. Usually with a fast storage and all that, the phone itself should be able to load up all the pictures instantly, but in this case, it was just a little bit slower, so just a bit wondering maybe it is due to the software not being really polished and all that. That could be something as well. So that's just the in terms of the processing power. Let's talk a little bit about the cameras. Now at the back, you will notice that we have this huge module that I just mentioned earlier on, and it actually houses three sensors. Now the main sensor here is a 48 megapixel main sensor. You also have an ultra wide that goes all the way up to 150 degrees. And last but not least, you also have a telephoto lens that is an 8 megapixel sensor. It also comes with OIS and it does up to 3.3 times optical zoom. So pretty standard stuff. Again, I wasn't able to actually extract the photos that I took at the show. The OnePlus guy told me that I shouldn't be sending photos here and there. So alright, doesn't really matter. But from the user interface itself, it has that Hasselblad kind of a button, the orange button. Performance seems very similar. The zoom itself, the range itself looks great. I mean, the ultra wide, you have a few options to play with it around. You have the super ultra wide version, 150 degrees, that actually creates this kind of fish eye effect. Although me personally, I don't think I would take more than 5 shots with the fish eye. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. But in terms of just taking ultra wide photos, I think the 150 degrees will really help you out if you are really in a tight spot. Now, moving on to the battery, we do have that 5000 mAh battery on board. According to OnePlus, it supports 80-watt wired charging, so you can get from 0 to 100% in about 32 minutes. Now, it also supports 50 watts of fast wireless charging, and it can go from 0 to 100% in slightly more than 40 minutes. So again, very fast charging over there. Everything is fast on the OnePlus 10 Pro. But now let's talk a little bit about the more important part, and that is actually OxygenOS. Now, I wasn't able to see the exact version of OxygenOS, but I believe it is OxygenOS 12. The guy at the OnePlus booth did tell me that OnePlus is working on OxygenOS 13 that will be based on Android 13. So that should land further later on, maybe next year or this year. I'm not sure about that. He wasn't able to tell as well. But yeah, the good news here is that OxygenOS is back. I was very happy to use it. I mean, honestly speaking, when I used the phone, the OnePlus 10 Pro at the show, it felt very similar to an Oppo device, ColorOS specifically. So you might notice that, you know, in terms of the logo of OxygenOS and ColorOS, it looks very similar. The kind of design cues looks very similar. So in one sense, it might be OnePlus just saying that, okay, look, the fans are not happy with us dropping OxygenOS, so they're going to come off with a spin-off of ColorOS. So I can't really tell if that is true, but it did felt very similar to the device, the Oppo Find X5 Pro that I actually also tested out on the show floor. So very similar experience there. But again, in terms of OxygenOS, everything is very clean. You do not have much bloatware on the device itself. Minimal apps pre-installed on the device that I saw on the show. Apart from that, everything was very smooth. We have that very familiar always-on display that was on the OnePlus 8, if I'm not mistaken. That actually launched back then. I can't remember the exact model, but we also still have that. So you still have a couple of elements of OxygenOS in the OnePlus 10 Pro itself. But according to OnePlus, again, when they go to OxygenOS 13, they will be focusing on making it very close to stock Android. So again, yeah, happy to see that happening because stock Android is always great. Anyways, yep, this is just my very first impressions and some thoughts that I have on the OnePlus 10 Pro. Still very excited to actually get my hands on one actual unit to play around with it because again, like I said, I used to use a couple of OnePlus devices and they used to be my favorite devices. So yeah, that's that. Alright guys, thank you for dropping by today's video once again. If you do happen to like this video, don't forget to like and sub. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. I'm more than happy to try and help you out. Again, this is Lim with Lim Reviews and I hope all of you are staying safe. See you guys in the next one. Bye!